Hi there, this is Tony from pianotone.ca, and this is my review on the DOREMIDI high-speed USB host box, model UMH21. Now, DOREMIDI makes a number of different MIDI boxes that kind of look similar but have different uses from one to the next. So if you're looking for one of these online, make sure you're looking at the correct one. What this model does is convert a USB MIDI signal into a traditional 5-pin MIDI signal. And this allows you to connect devices that only have USB MIDI out to other devices that have 5-pin MIDI so that they can communicate with each other. Now also note there's a version of this box that is not high speed. That one is model UMH10. But the UMH10 is only compatible with the older versions of USB, so 1.0 and 1.1. The UMH21 has up to USB 2.0 compatibility and only costs a few dollars more. So if you're in the market for one of these, I'd highly recommend that you get the high-speed one, the UMH21, so you've got less chance of any compatibility or lag issues. Okay, so let's check it out. Okay, so as I mentioned, the UMH21 is going to allow you to connect a device that only has a USB MIDI out to a device that has a 5-pin MIDI port. There are tons of use cases for this that use various MIDI music devices that don't involve keyboards. But the reason I went out and got one of these devices is for my specific use case, which is what I'm going to be demonstrating in this video. To be able to connect a keyboard that only has a USB MIDI out to the 5-pin MIDI in on my new Yamaha CK88 stage piano, so that I can use that external keyboard as a MIDI controller and trigger the awesome sounds on my CK88. This opens up all sorts of cool functionality, like having a lighter key action than the CK88's fully weighted action, available for organ or synth sounds. Or if you're somebody that's used to playing an organ with an upper and a lower keyboard. Or let's say you've got a CK61 instead of a CK88, and the 61 doesn't have a fully weighted key bed. In that case, you could connect a fully weighted MIDI controller to your CK61 and then get fully weighted action for some of those piano songs if you want. Or to have a smaller keyboard to use for a left-hand bass without having to lose an octave or two on my CK by doing that with a split. Or even to open up the possibility of having two people play keyboard at once, both taking advantage of the awesome sounds on the CK. Now, I did do a video that demonstrates how to do all of those things on the CK61 or CK88 already, which I will link to in the description below, so you can check that out if you're interested. But in that video, I used an external MIDI controller that did have a 5-pin MIDI out, so I only needed a MIDI cable. I didn't need the DOREMIDI host box. But as I mentioned in that video, most keyboards and digital pianos, like my CasioTone CTS1 up here, and also most of the less expensive and physically smaller MIDI controllers nowadays tend to only have USB MIDI out ports and no 5-pin MIDI ports. And since I have a lot of keyboards just like that, I thought I'd pick up one of these boxes so that I'd have the option of connecting them to my CK88. So using this box is really simple. There's a USB power port on the back. The box does come with a cable for that, but it doesn't come with a power plug, so you do need to use a standard USB power plug to plug it in. Then on the front, there's a USB to host port. This is where you're going to connect the USB MIDI signal that you want to convert. So I'm going to connect my CasioTone CTS1 keyboard's USB MIDI out to this port on the DOREMIDI. Then I've got a 5-pin MIDI cable that I'll connect to the MIDI out on the DOREMIDI, to the MIDI in port on the back of my Yamaha CK88, and that's all I need. Okay, so I've got everything connected to the DOREMIDI and it's powered on. So I've got my CasioTone CTS1 keyboard connected to the USB host port. So that signal is going to get converted to the 5-pin MIDI. I've got the 5-pin MIDI cable connected to the MIDI out port, and then that's going to the MIDI in port on my CK88. Okay, so right now, the video that you're watching is only receiving audio from my Yamaha CK88. This mic is actually connected to the CK88, and the CK is sending all of its audio output directly to my iPhone, which is recording this video, direct from the audio interface that's built into the CK88's USB port. And I've also got an adapter connected to the CTS1's headphone port, so that means the speakers on my CTS1 are disabled, so you won't hear anything out of the CTS1 speakers through this mic. So if I play the CT1, you can see that it's triggering the piano sound I've got selected on the CK88. And there's also no noticeable lag, which is awesome. So if I choose a different sound on the CK without touching the CTS1, so I just chose a electric piano, You can see the CTS1 is now triggering that sound. So once again, this works really, really well. And if you want more info on setting up and using a MIDI controller with your Yamaha CK series piano, then check the link in my description for my tutorial on that. Now, if you have a more complex use case in mind for the DOREMIDI host box, you can apparently connect multiple USB MIDI devices to the box by using a USB hub and then connecting the hub to the USB host port. And you can also connect another device that does have 5-pin MIDI out to the 5-pin MIDI in port. And then all of that gets sent out through the MIDI out port. Now, I haven't tested any of that. I just wanted to see how well this box would work for my use case, which is to connect a keyboard with just a USB MIDI out as a controller for my CK. And that does work really, really well. My long-term plan for that is to actually try and find a MIDI controller or keyboard that has a key action that's going to work better than the CK's fully weighted key bed for organ songs, in particular Hammond organ, which I'm super interested in and starting to play more and more of. An ideal choice for that would actually be a MIDI controller with full-sized, semi-weighted key action, and there are lots of those. I tried an M-Audio Oxygen Pro 49 out, and it has a nice key action. But ideally, it would also have waterfall keys, which is great for organ slides. These look at first like piano keys, but they don't have the lip on the front edge like piano keys do. And they are also a little bit more rounded on the corners, which makes it a lot more comfortable for those slides. You'll find keys like that on actual Hammond organs or on other organ-centric keyboards like the Nord Electro. But so far, I've had no luck finding a MIDI controller that has waterfall keys. I've seen a number of organ players on YouTube create 2 or even 3-tiered organ setups that use MIDI sound banks. And they often use M-Audio MIDI controllers, so I may have to try one of those out. But all that aside, back to this review. As far as the DOREMIDI host box is concerned, highly recommended. So that's pretty much it for this video. If you like the content, please smash the like button and subscribe to my channel. It does really help me out. I've left affiliate links in the description to the DOREMIDI UMH21 MIDI host box, and also to the tutorial I did on using a MIDI controller with a new Yamaha CK series of stage keyboards. And I've also got some links to some online piano training that I've taken and that I recommend. So thanks again for stopping by, and have an awesome day.